everyone, and welcome to the session with the product management for the backup and recovery services. My name is Alex Goldblatt. I'm a member of the team, primarily focusing on the Oracle recovery service. And today, the theme that we will discuss is the applicability of the recovery service to the cybersecurity and what kind of measures we already put in place to ensure that your environment is going to be completely protected. So just a little bit of background information. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because everybody knows the facts. It all started with the cybersecurity, then it evolved into the ransomware, which is the #1 issue today in the cyber world. And so kind of breaking news that for the 2023, the ransomware payments exceeded 1.1 billion, which is roughly 100% increase year over the year. And so that basically is driven by the fact that anticipation that by 2031, ransomware will cost the world up to 265 billion and will become one of the major factors driving the failure of specific spectrum of the companies not being ready for this challenge. The average total cost of the data breach in 2023 and up by 40% to almost 5 million. And we're going to talk about it. This is just the immediate cost. Okay, there is no such a thing that's no residual cost is going to be involved. So essentially, the number that might be exposed due to the cyber attack is way higher than just 5 million. The estimates are that the average life cycle of the data breach is almost a year long. This is just for the forensic identity, this is just for the recovery, just for the analysis of the situation and mitigation. And obviously the overall residual effect, just like finance, is going to be much greater than just this number. So just to kind of wrap it all up, the database attacks, even just a few minutes, can impact a lot of transactions. It's not just the scrambling of data, but it's also potentially penetration with the raw data within the database itself. And at the end of the day, the biggest threat and the biggest challenge that companies have to deal with is the reputational damage that can last decades. So what do we have in a sense of the penetration? Just put like a little perspective on how complicated the overall schema is and why it is so essential to understand the overall complexity. You have initial attack and hackers just establish the HQ, so they just set up their gear, they just plug it into the network, then they start sending emails, doing whatever they have to do just to penetrate the actual first level of the identification. And so the typical answer that comes up with the CISO assessments and security assessments is what are the steps in the place to actually deal with this type of the situation? Are they being followed? And then it goes to the data access. Data access, that means just the preliminary data, not necessarily production data, but just any data that can help to expose the internal guts of the overall security and accessibility within the corporate network. And so it goes a little bit deeper because once they gain access to the actual business critical data, the question is just how long it's going to take to start manipulating and how long does it take to start publishing data that might be damaging to the business on the public web. And of course, all these efforts is going to be basically mitigated pretty easily, but the essence of the attack is not just to stop on the primary storage and primary data capacity, because if you still have a capability to recover, then you still have a capability to recover. You can shut off all the production. It's going to be a massive cleanup. It's going to take maybe a couple of weeks, but it's still doable. So they have to penetrate all the way down to the last line of defense, meaning your backups and your precious disaster recovery strategy. And that's how they gain the coin when the business essentially just being completely submitted. So I like it to call it like a circuit breaker in a sense, and so the that's basically the essence of the layer defense that we have in the cloud, especially in the Oracle cloud. And it all starts with exactly the same, the last line of defense, meaning impenetrable capabilities to recover your data no matter what. And so we're going to dive into a little bit of technical details. How do we structure, how do we architect this? And so what we actually do to make sure that none of these events will ever occur. And it starts with the encrypted data. It starts with the isolated backup capacity, unpenetratable by any rogue actor because nobody has access to the backup data to start with. And then it goes to the next level, to the actual primary, though, with the database services. And obviously, it's heavily leaning on the security hardened the infrastructure, up-to-date software, the constantly running security scrubbing and checks, et cetera, et cetera. And then it goes way up to the front line to make sure that your auditing and your firewall and the cyber resilience capabilities in your customer OCI tenancy completely taking place. And the best part of that, so we actually can control the entire stack to ensure that this is actually just happening. And then on the completely front line, from the external access to the primary target, as your employees, for example, you have DBSS, you have user account and privileges and role certification because it's all embedded in the core of the OCI infrastructure as it is. And so the net outcome, you don't have to pay. And this is why we see a lot of conversations happening today. Probably 90% of customers migrating to OCI that I talk to, they state exactly the same problem. We're not ready. How can we get ready? What do you guys have to offer? Because we don't have this on premises, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the firepower. We oftentimes just simply not fit to deal with this type of the challenge. So speaking of last line of defense, this is what we have to offer. This is autonomous recovery service. As you probably already know, the product was G8 last year. We've been online for, 7-8 months now, with pretty decent level of success. A lot of customers coming from the on-prem already have zero data loss recovery appliance. So when they should look for migration to cloud, they want to see complete parity between what they have on-prem versus what we can offer in the cloud. And so we do exactly that. So we basically took the same excellence of the technology provided by the recovery appliance and put it in the cloud. And then we built an extremely fancy layer of the control plane, of the UI, of a lot of mechanisms that are native to OCI on the top of the recovery appliance, therefore creating this service. So this, again, I have to stress out, this is not just recovery appliance, so this is actually a service as the recovery appliance in the cloud. And we integrated with the front-end database services. Today we have 3 autonomous database dedicated, so which is going to be G8 later this year and going to be available in all regions. And so then, as you can see, Exadata database service and so base database service, which is already G8 and so being fully available in all regions. So from the time of the G, basically. So let's talk about what are the qualities. So that's we have. And I see like somebody put up the hand, and please, guys, just feel free to post any questions in Q&A. We have additional members of my team that are online and are ready to answer like anything that you have. So what are the cybersecurity qualities that we offer as a part of the native infrastructure for the recovery service? So first and foremost, it's data encryption, validation, verification, and protection, right? So this is, again, a little bit of mix of the OCI guidelines and technology, and plus the actual processes that are native to the recovery appliance technology. So validation, verification, and protection, obviously that comes native from our side. The encryption is the TD encryption that being enforced pretty much everywhere in OCI. Yes, hypothetically, you can shut it down. Hypothetically, you can avoid, but from the kind of rational standpoint, this is definitely not something that we would encourage. Hardened Exadata infrastructure components. Recovery appliance, basically, a difference between the on-prem and the cloud deployment is pretty substantial. In the case of the on-prem with the zero data loss recovery appliances, we have Exadata-based platform, but it's fine-tuned to the necessities of the recovery appliance itself. So there was like a little bit of deviation, even though that we still enjoy the qualities of the hardened platform, which is Exadata itself. In the cloud, we actually consume through Exadata. This is not an engineered platform. We just put our software on the top of the native Exadata rack, and so we deliver it as the recovery service. And what it allows us, so it allows us to have a streamlined maintenance and upgrade processes because we basically belong to the same fleet. So net outcome is that even from the maintaining the overall fleet to make sure that there are going to be no security vulnerabilities, it plays extremely important role to us. Highly available configuration. We'll talk about it on the next slide a little bit, but just to kind of put onus on this one. When you start using the recovery service, you can enjoy automatic HA config. You don't have to build anything. You're not being built for this. You're not doing like practically anything, and you're ready from the get-go. You have HA in place. So the next one is the access controls. This is not us. So this is actually being driven by the same OCI constructs. Okay, so you have the role-based access controls. You have the segregated accessibility within the tenancy. You have defined roles. You have defined security constructs with security policies. So we just simply integrated with all these wealth of the security provisioning provided by the OCI natively. Policy-based database backup. So we'll talk about it in depth. But just to stress out, so we switched to the complete automation, and policy is a quintessential management mechanism as a part of the recovery service itself. So the same rule applies. So like TD, can you do operations manually? The answer is yes. Do you have to? The answer is absolutely no. And there are a lot of add-on meanings and add-on features that we basically provide as the completely automated management framework. And again, we're going to dive into it just shortly. Fast data recovery with zero data loss. Again, this is just a native quality of the recovery appliance, of course. The predication of the data recovery is primarily based on the generation of the virtual synthetic in the backend, so meaning that you do not really have to go and apply L0 and then to apply multiple L1s, and then you have your database recovered and archive logs. So we do this for you automatically in the backend, and at any given time, if you have a necessity to recover your database, you can simply go and just pick up the timestamp or whatever, and so just to have it being recovered right away. And so this is just one of the unique features of our technology that we provide right over the gates. End-to-end monitoring and reporting. Again, it's a mixed bag. The monitoring and reporting capabilities are native to OCI. Nevertheless, you have to enrich it with the specific metrics. And so this is exactly what we've done. We basically took what we generate on the backend and populated it to the front ends. So you can have complete access and complete understanding of what is happening in your environment. Automated detection and learning, exactly the same. It actually sits on the top. That's basically just defining the monitoring and reporting being populated as a part of the detection and the learning. If you monitor your situation, you know exactly what's happening. You guys can set up the alerting to your own liking and to decide what is really, really important in your environment. And immutability. This one is a big one. We constantly running into the same conversations. What does it mean, immutability? So when you go to on-prem with the same zero data loss recovery appliances, immutability means a specific quality of the settings on the backend, meaning that you create immutable environments. You create immutable environments based on the qualities of the backend storage and accessibility. And this is not necessarily translating into the quality of the cloud services, and we'll talk about it. And but it is really important to understand. So that's things like, for example, air gap deployment and the immutable storage or triaging for the access controls is not necessarily translating into the OCI services because of the inapplicability of the specific functionality that just simply cannot be deployed on the cloud. So architecture, just a little bit rundown of how do we structure deployment within OCI. It all starts with the real-time protection. So you have an option to enable a real-time redo transport, just what you have with recovery appliance. With just a click of the button. It is specific to the database. You can check, you can uncheck. There is like no complexity whatsoever. That's why we provide two separate services. We have the basic service, which basically is predicated on the normal RMAN activities. L0s, L1s, archive sweeps, 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And then we create virtual synthetic on the back. But if you have a business critical application and you need transactional level protection, you can enable, like I said, with just a click of the button, real-time protection. And here you have it. We're going to be automatically switching to the data guard async real-time redo transport instead. I mentioned that backups are not accessible. This is why we actually have all the backup data stored in our tenancy. You don't have backup data stored in your tenancy. You don't control it. You don't touch it. It's completely managed environment. And to ensure that we have a secure connection between your precious database and the backend recovery service, so we switched it to the, again, native to OCI. It's called private endpoints for the connectivity. And we did this just to do two things. One is to improve performance overall. Two is to make sure that we have 100% end-to-end established secure communication between the recovery service and database and OCI. RMAN configuration jobs. I already mentioned, yes, you can do this manually. But yet again, there is no point in really doing any manual operations in OCI, even though it can be fully supported. So the point is that automation gives you much more efficiency and much more convenience and manageability compared to any manual operations. So we have extremely positive feedback from pretty much all customers that switch to us. That's things that were not available to them both on-prem and so with the RMAN config in the cloud now became available. The environment becomes manageable, and so the overall effort of the IT staff maintaining the backup activities is reduced to literal dust. And this is the one that I already mentioned on the previous slide, so the highly available builds. Okay, so we deploy all the recovery plans in physical pairs. And so this is why I mentioned that we give you basically comfort, secured environments right out of the gate without making you to really sweat it or even to pay for it. Okay, and so there are a lot of things that we provide on the top of the just deploying highly available pairs. So as you can see, we make sure that all the pairs are basically spread around. If you have large regions, like for example, Ashburn, with multiple availability domains, so we are going to put appliances in different ADs. Otherwise, they're going to be spread in the same AD across the full domains. And two things. One is you benefit from it, of course. Two is we benefit, and so the reason why we benefit is to make sure that so any maintenance, any hiccups on the primary are not going to be reflecting or affecting your service to start with. So you do not see like any effects or ill effects of the actual maintenance activities like you would see on-prem. So last one is flexible restore options within the same database service. No, you cannot restore the XODB directly to any other service, okay? But at the same time, you have multitudes of the same recovery options available, just like you would have on-prem. It gets a little bit more difficult because of the constructs within OCI. Like, for example, can you recover across, let's say, availability domain? The answer is yes. Can you recover across different regions? Not yet, but you will be able to. So again, this is just one of these caveats that come natively to the cloud consumers, but of course it's not being available for the on-prem deployments. So let's talk about specifics of the cyber resiliency features in OCI. And we're going to start with immutability again. So as I mentioned, this is just one of the major themes that we constantly bumping into, because there is like quite a bit of confusion. You can see conversations coming across. Like, for example, I have Cohesity on-prem, and they guarantee immutability. If I migrate to OCI, do I retain the same qualities of the immutable storage? The answer is no. So the questions are the same. The challenges are not the same. And the one of the inherited qualities that you get for free if moving to OCI is that everything that we do is fundamentally sound. We have best practices in place from the security assessment. We have the best tools in place from security assessment. We have MA best practices, how to architect the service and how to architect and maintain the backend for the service. So net, again, the questions are the same, the challenges are not the same. And we have definitely upper hands in anything that we do, simply because we constantly evolving and improving the overall deployment following updated practices. So kind of to summarize, okay, so the what is immutability in the cloud, okay? As I mentioned, the notion of the immutable storage is simply not applicable anymore. Why? Because you don't have any access to the storage to start with. There is no basically any rogue actor that can potentially penetrate your tenancy to have even a slimmer chance to get to your backups. And you can always have access even if your primary completely goes under. Okay, and so we actually have multiple customers and large enterprises that were looking for the same answer. What is going to be happening if my primary completely is under? What is happening if my both primary and secondary completely go under with data guard? Can you guys recover? If I don't have access to my UI, can you recover? The answer is yes, simply because nobody has access to your backup data. And this is just the beginning, again. So this is the easy answer about the immutable storage, but immutable storage doesn't really give you much. If it is just immutable storage, this is just absolutely not good enough. If you go back to my first slides and you understand the complexity of the layer defense, this is exactly what it is. Okay, so the immutable access to data is just the beginning, but then you have to put on the top a lot of layers just to make sure that this is not going to get to this. And one of them is TD encryption. Okay, so the TD encryption in the cloud is a must from our standpoint. So as you know, you can disable it on the front end, but the recovery service will not accept non-TD encrypted data. And the second part is that we segregate key management versus backup management. So as you know, this is absolutely no goal for any security environments to have encryption keys and the backup or any data collocated, because that's just the best target for any perpetrator that you can find to this world. I mentioned the role-based access control. This is just really important because, again, we want to make sure that the policies that you have in place are going to be completely applicable to whatever we do on the backend with recovery service as well, and that's exactly what we've done. Again, manage backup infrastructure with no customer access. We already spoke about it. The things that we have in place, so that's in the under like a certain circumstance, you can always open an SR and just to regain your access, or just to make sure that the backend is going to be completely available for you, because it's completely managed environments by us. We will talk about policy management and protection lock just in a second, but just to mention that this is just something unique to the service itself, but yet again, it is just a deviation from what is available on-prem. And so the last but not least is government regulations and compliance with the regulations. The regulated environments demands compliance with a specific set of rules, like whether it's going to be HIPAA or it's going to be SEC. It all depends on your vertical. At the end of the day, when you have on-prem deployments, you always ask the same question: are you guys certified? So the same applies in OCI. You're going to come to us and ask the same question: before I got to move my environments, are you guys actually certified? Because I have regulated environment to start with, and I have to comply with it. So we extremely conscious about this. We currently work on the government certification, so we do expect that the recovery service is going to be fully available in all realms, including government and extremely secure ONSAR. And we already completed a number of certifications, like, for example, HIPAA certification is fully in place. So again, on-prem doesn't translate to what's happening in OCI, but at the same time, because we have best experience in both roles, so we can easily see the applicability and necessity in doing that. And yes, it is one of the top priorities for us. Just a quick rundown. I will not go like line by line in the greater details. This is just basically short list of what is really, really important in a sense of the cyber resiliency. And as you can see, there are some things that, for example, we didn't discuss yet, as the backup deletion prevention. As I mentioned, you can mix automation and manual. But at the same time, you cannot just run delete operation, arm delete operation into the recovery service. We block it, you're going to get error message, and that's going to be the end of it. So again, that's just one of the things that's related to the immutable environment overall. So again, I have to stress it out. This is not immutable storage. It's much better. It's immutable environment end to end. And another thing that's also worth mentioning, we actually provide a solution. Okay, so we don't provide just a recovery service for the sake of providing recovery service. If you have MAH Platinum deployment or the Gold deployment on-prem, you have your primary, you have your sync data guard between the primary and secondary, you have recovery plans on both primary and secondary, and so you have completely isolated security environments on the both upper and on the lower level in a sense of the communication and replication. So this is where we head into, and we definitely want to provide the same parity between what you have on-prem and in the cloud. And it is going to be available partially the MA Gold with the data guard sync on the front end and the recovery service on the back end on the both primary and the secondary with the data guard standby backup availability on the secondary end is going to be available later this year. And then we will follow up with the support of the complete MA Platinum when we're going to enable recovery service replication between the regions. So how does it feel and look in the UI? So this is just a database configuration. When you create your database or you already have your database active, you can go and so you can just pop up the configuration of the automatic backups. And so you see that the first option available today is autonomous recovery service. It doesn't mean that we disabled OSS or the object storage backups. It's a drop-down list. So you still can have access to the object storage backups, but it is not the preferred option. As you can see on the screen, it is clearly stated. So, the pricing is identical, but the benefits of switching to the recovery service outweigh like anything that you can have with OSS. And hence the applicability of the protection policy. So I mentioned that policy is extremely important constructs in OCI, and so you can pick and choose to your own liking the recovery window, the value between 14 and 95 days, and you can enable real-time data protection. And that's the two major options relevant to the cyber resiliency: protection policy association and options for the primary database termination. What does mean primary database termination? That means that if you have not just the external actor, but if you have raw employee disgruntled, being laid off, or whatever it might be, and he goes and deletes your primary database, you still have full protection. You have two options. One is you can follow the retention policies defined in the actual protection play for the automated backups, or you can switch to the 72 hours. So there is no immediate delete whatsoever. So you destined to have access to your precious data, even if the primary was deleted by mistake or by intent. The monitoring and the learning. So we provided wells of data, as you can see, on the health status and data loss monitoring. And what is really important is not just the having this visual aid that tells you that you have protected database and your data loss exposure is under control. What is really important, and I already mentioned, that we fully embedded in the alerting mechanism in OCI. And so you can actually set alerts for all these parameters, and it gets automated notification if something goes south. So I cannot give you the name of the customers, but if you can imagine, with thousands of databases, it's virtually impossible to manage like that. And we provide exactly this type of the management environment where you can easily identify if something goes wrong. So this is just the status screen for the protected database within the tenancy. And there are a couple of things just worth mentioning, again, relatable to the cyber resilience. Again, so this is data loss exposure. What does mean data loss exposure? If you have your backup and if you have your L1s running, let's say daily, and then you have archive sweeps running twice a day, that means that data loss exposure is 12 hours between the sweeps. And so because we control the frequency of the archive sweeps, or we can switch to the DataGuard async real-time radio, therefore just eliminating data loss altogether, that becomes extremely critical. And this is why we say that this screen actually can give you a lot of ideas on what is happening. Again, you can associate it with alerting. And so you can also take a look at the what is happening with the real-time protected databases. And again, on the first line, as you can see, 17 minutes. So that's the time interval between the last sweep and the next scheduled sweep. Otherwise, it's going to be 0 seconds if the real-time protection is enabled. So policy. Policy is the universal engine to control pretty much everything. If you're going to go to any well-known backup solution on-prem, whether it's going to be Commvault, or it's going to be Veritas Net Backup, or it's going to be Cohesity or Rubrik, everything is hinging on the policy engine. So we do exactly the same. And we allow you to control backup retention. You are allowed to control a couple of more extra perks on the policy settings. But yet again, in the future, the policy engine is going to be vastly developed, and we're going to be adding additional qualities to the protection policy to make sure that we're not going to be deviating from the automation and management framework, which is going to be fundamentally based on the protection policy to start with. So here comes the feature that I mentioned before, but I didn't elaborate. So the retention lock. What does mean retention lock? In the normal legacy storage world, you can set up immutability and retention lock on the storage side. Well, let's say data domain. So in the cloud world, it's virtually impossible because it's basically a shared environment, and even the dedicated environment is still going to be pretty difficult to maintain. So what do we do? Because you do not have access to the backend, so we can control it entirely by the means of the same policy settings. And so we had a number of requests from the very respected customers asking exactly that. Can you make sure that Oracle DB admin doesn't have access to deviate from the retention policies in the company, and just to freely change the retention enabled on the policy side? And the answer is yes. So we, as you can see, created a new feature, which is called retention lock. And in this particular case, if retention lock is enabled in the policy, 26 days are going to be totally locked. And this is just exactly that. We just make sure that the retention settings are not going to be anyhow deviated from or changed or altered or eliminated altogether. If you're going to ask me a question, okay, if I'm going to take my database, I'm going to be moving to another policy, is it possible? The answer is no. You're going to have to call the support guys and just to make sure that they're going to be able to transition your precious database to any other policy, and you're going to have to provide full justification for doing that. The retention settings, I mentioned that we have two separate options for the maintaining or retaining backups in the case of the elimination of the primary database. So you have the policy, you have the 72 hours. So theoretically, you can go back to the automated backup settings and you can try to switch it to the 72 hours instead of the strict policy, and it's not going to work because all the retention lock qualities are going to be applicable to created backups or to the protected databases. Yes, you can increase the backup retention. It is really important because regulations might change and you might have a necessity to bump from 30 days to 60 days for whatever reason. So definitely you are allowed to do exactly that. You cannot decrease the value though. And another one is, this is just more like a precautionary feature, but if you go and you click and you enable the retention lock, it does mean that it's going to take effect in full right away. We give you a 14 days grace period. If you have second thoughts, if you erroneously enabled for the wrong policy, if whatever happens, if somebody decided to fall around, we're still not going to be enforcing it right away, just exactly to give you complete security and complete control over your environment. And so yet again, back to the accessibility and so the kind of controls and so the potential rogue actors just deviating from the game plan, restriction will apply for all users, even the tenancy admins. So just to kind of recap from where we started since where we kind of ended up this conversation. The cyber resiliency challenges, and so like I said, so this is probably 90% of customers that I talk to. I rarely see customers saying that we already have everything in place, and we just need parity between what we have and where we're heading to if moving to OCI. Typically, this is not the case. So typically, we go with the CISO assessment first and foremost with the OCI services or Oracle services. We scout the environment, so we identify the gaps, and we give guidance and advisory to customers what to do and what to improve. And again, oftentimes, the case is that customers not just not ready, but simply not capable of doing something to really protect the environment and make sure that it's going to be unpenetratable. And it's hinging on a lot of things. People running outdated databases. We have customers running 11, 12 versions on the Oracle database still, right? And you can imagine what kind of security vulnerabilities it has today. We do not allow this in OCI. We make sure that everything is up to date, and the cyber resiliency strategy is completely taking place. And to me, I like comparing cyber resiliency strategy to the disaster recovery strategy. You, of course, know how massive investment it is for any enterprise to build a prolific disaster recovery strategy. And then you go through the disaster recovery drills, and then you go with the failover drills, and you do just all the 9 yards to maintain. There's no difference between cyber resilience and disaster recovery. It's actually disaster recovery on steroids, in my mind. So what do you offer? We offer the OCI Managed Security Best Practices Foundation. Again, so when you come to us, again, you have a completely fundamentally sound environment. You have more up-to-date technology and infrastructure, and whether you're talking about database services or network or the backend with recovery service itself, it doesn't matter. Like everything is completely up-to-date, completely maintained properly, and completely secure. We provide, again, solutions not just as isolated set of services. It is a solution. And so we give you access to the comprehensive backup recovery, disaster recovery, and business continuity service portfolio, whether it's DataGuard, or whether it's Golden Gate service or recovery service, or whatever you need, you have full access to this share wealth of the add-on portfolio that we carry as a part of the OCI. And of course, we focus on the service availability and resilience, and because we are bound by the SLAs, by the contractual agreements, and so when something goes south, you can easily blame it on us. And just to wrap it up with the last line of defense again, so the best protection for Oracle database cloud services. A lot of things that's kind of applicable just a little bit on the top, like for example, customers that already has Commvault in place, they might come to OCI and say, well, can we use Commvault Metallic in OCI? And the answer is yes, theoretically everything is possible, but is it really worthwhile? And the essence of the recovery service in the cloud is quintessential. We give you access to the industry-leading zero data loss protection, again, with the recovery appliance technology. You have end-to-end database integrated recovery validation. You don't have to sweat unencrypted TDE and re-encrypt it with some alien encryption patterns, so just make sure that you're going to have encrypted data at rest. We take care of the complete encryption end-to-end in flight and at rest automatically for you. And then you have the comprehensive database backup lifecycle monitoring and alerting, so you have completely automated environments from the get-go, and everything is controlled with a single click of the button. And last but not least is the infrastructure itself. It is elastic infrastructure. It is the elasticity basically defines the quality of the performance availability. So we're not just scale on the back end, we're not just increasing the capacity, but we make sure that whatever happens on the front end, so whatever the SLAs that you have to maintain on the front end are going to be as elastic as just the back end itself. And so this is just extremely important to keep in mind. So that's again, if something goes south and SLAs are not maintained, we're going to find a way how to mitigate this. Just a couple of quick slides. We have a lot of resources already in place, both for the recovery appliances and for the recovery service. This is just a short list of the recently published items. As you can see, it's a mix of the guidance for the overall cyber resiliency capabilities in OCI. I think it's really important to keep in mind that, again, it all starts with the front end. So if you guys are curious on what actually OCI is offering in a sense of the cyber resiliency, please just take a look at this documentation in OCI. It's extremely important to understand where it starts and where it ends. We have a number of blogs that we recently published as a team, and so we have additional webinars available to your disposal. And just to remind that the backup and recovery resources, you have separate product landing pages. So for both recovery appliance and recovery service, you have access to the fully baked documentation, of course, and documentation actually spans across the database services and the recovery service itself. So it's cross-linked. And so you have additional technology that we offer, like Oracle Secure Backup and the blogosphere that we maintain. And with that, I can say thank you so much. I really appreciated your attention. Any questions?
Alex, there was a question early on in your presentation. I believe it was maybe slide 3 or 4, and you mentioned there was a feature that is going to be GA'd soon. Do you remember what that was?
Yes, it's a DataGuard standby backup. Okay. So yes, it is extremely important feature because it allows us to cross-link your environment for the highly available builds. I mentioned that it is aligned with the MAH Gold practices advisory. So today, DataGuard standby is fully supported by the object storage, but not by the recovery service. And we're going to get full parity in this respect shortly this year.
I just saw a question on the Q&A about will these services also be
So
available in
available.
Azure in the future?
That's a great question. Kelly, do you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I can talk about that really quick. So, obviously, the Oracle database has an at Azure um, implementation. The same OCI automation will be available in that at Azure um, database deployment, and the plan is to have recovery service also be part of that deployment and as an option to automatic backup.
Thank you, and that was a great question. But yeah, just to reinforce what Kelly just said, that it is definitely one of the priorities for our development today to fully support set Azure. TCO versus object store. Again, I should mention that we have two services, right? So we have base service, so with a separate SKU, and we have the separate SKU for the real-time protection, which is a 30% uplift. Since we consciously decided to provide both options available, we aligned overall price points for the base service along with the OSS. So there is a complete equality between the TCO for OSS and for us. And again, it was done intentionally. We basically trying to get to the point where we can easily claim that the recovery service is the future, and you do not have like really overspent on all this well, so the features that are just provided for you out of the box comparing to the basic OSS backup environment. So like, for example, inability to monitor, inability to charge back monitoring, inability to see your capacity consumption. So there are a lot of deficiencies that we deliberately addressed by deploying recovery service to start with. It was engineered with the top of mind to make sure that all the weaknesses that we have with the legacy OSS are going to be mitigated and resolved. Any other questions? It looks like you guys already answered all of it. Yeah, on-prem databases. So yeah, the hybrid environments. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not available yet. So this is a roadmap item. We are trying to gauge both ways, the on-prem to OCI replication on the recovery appliance level, and also just to see if we can support databases on-prem to recovery service as well. But like I said, it's just the roadmap items. We don't have like any projected timeline, unfortunately, at this point. And have a great day. Thank you again.